about my background and how I came to be here today. So there's me when I was little with my absolute favorite object in the whole wide world. This umbrella meant more to me than just about anything. And when I became a designer, I realized that I often set type in a spiral. So in some of the early things that I did, and even today, and I think it all comes back to that umbrella. Here's me a little older. We're going to go through all my ages. Nope. Anyway, I've decided that my whole life has been sort of a series of partnerships, starting out with my parents. I'm an only child, and my parents and I were and still are extremely close. And I have a slightly different problem than other graphic designers. Graphic designers always talk about how their parents don't understand what they do. My parents are both artists. My father's a graphic designer and my mother is an illustrator, painter, sculptor. So they understand what I do oh too well. They come to visit. They're very critical. You know, like I can be doing something and they're like, oh, Futura. I wouldn't have gone that way. So sometimes I come out of I used to, at number 17, I would come out of my back room and my father would be standing behind one of the designers, like, no, to the left. It's just, anyway. My parents are super cool also. This is them before I was born. They're in the red circles at their judo classes. My parents are both, well, my mother's a black belt and my father only made it to brown belt, but they both practiced judo. And we were like a little trio. We were like a team. We did everything together, and as I said, we're still very close. And like I said, they're also super duper cool, and they taught me so many things in such a broad way of looking at the world. There's me and my mother and my flipper lunchbox at the zoo. And there's me and my father. We used to spend, every year we would go, they would take me out of school and we would go spend time on this island called Anguilla, this island in the Caribbean, and there we are in Anguilla. And we particularly went to Anguilla because we had friends who were Anguillian, and so we would stay in their house while we were there. And it was always over Easter time, so we would always go to Easter Sunday services, so there we are all dressed up in our finest for Easter Sunday. And this particular family was relatively involved in the government of Anguilla. And Anguilla is a beautiful, beautiful Caribbean island, and it was a British colony, along with Nevis and St. Kitts. And at a certain point, Anguilla decided to secede from the British colonies, and so they declared, I guess, war against England, and there was a completely bloodless war. No one was hurt because all the soldiers came over from England and they were like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever been, and everyone just was very comfortable. But they needed an identity, and they needed a national flag, and my parents were the only graphic designers that they knew. So my parents designed the national flag of Anguilla. They will be so happy that you applauded. Anyway, so Anguilla won and seceded and became its own nation for a while, but after a few years, oh, and by the way, it's the sun over the water and 3 dolphins. They decided, it was better the other way. They went back. They became a British colony again, and so they had to change the flag, but they kept the design as part of the flag. And it's still a major part of the tourist paraphernalia that you can get when you go to Anguilla. Anyway, so design has always been a very important part of my life. And my parents instilled in me what a work ethic is. And they also gave me my very first design job. It was actually sort of more of an illustration job. When I was little, my parents did all these series of books for a publishers called Young Readers Press, and they were all for schools, and they did things that were books about the alphabet, and usually my father would design them and my mother would illustrate them. And so this is a sample spread from this particular book, and my parents they hired me, actually, to do illustrations within their illustrations. And they taught me that you got paid for your work. They taught me never to do spec work, never. And so they paid me, and I'd get like a quarter for each little drawing I did. And I would ask for my quarter, and my parents would say, "Not till the check comes." And so apparently, I would every day, I was like, "Did the check come yet?" So there's that. The next important partnership in my life was after college. I went to Cooper Union, just like my parents. And after that, I started working at a design studio called the Emin Company for a man named Tibor Kalman. And it was incredibly influential on me. And the funny thing is, there's me and Tibor. I'm just curious, do you guys know who Tibor is or what Emin Company was? Show of hands? Wow, okay. So anyway, it was a very influential design studio in New York. Small. Tibor, I think, is responsible for a lot of the way designers think today in a sort of backwards thinking. One of his mottos was to get everything just exactly not quite right. And so if you don't know who Tibor is or what Emin Company is, I urge you to look it up, check out the book. It's really interesting, smart work. It's colors for Benetton, well, you'll see a little tiny bit. But anyway, Tibor was a graphic designer, and he was also married to a woman who was an illustrator who did children's books. So it was a little bit like I found my parents, and I went to work for my parents at this studio. That was incredibly creative and smart and vibrant. And we did work for people like Talking Heads. This is an album cover that I worked on, where literally David Byrne was like, "I think the album cover should be a painting of a monkey." So we made a painting of a monkey and had this beautiful frame made, and it was really fun. And this is the cover for a book of Herb Ritt's photography called Notorious, and it was just great to be able to just slap some type inside a big mouth. And also we did a music video for Talking Heads, which was one of the very first music videos that actually used typography in it. And again, I'm just showing stills from it now to keep the time kind of short, but if you can, take a look at it. It's on YouTube. You'll be amazed at how bad the technology was not that long ago. But it was considered relatively groundbreaking and won, I think, one of the first music video awards. And then there's Myra, who is Tibor's lovely and talented and charming and funny wife. And with her, I designed 5 different children's books. And she had a very cool and quirky way of looking at the world, and I think I learned from them a lot about thinking differently and sort of trying to do stuff that pushes things further and that's always, always, always about the idea and not just about the style of something. And there's another thing, Emin Company made all these watches, and on the back of every watch was engraved the phrase, "waste not a moment," and that's something else that I sort of took from that as I try in my life, which isn't to say that I don't, play video games and watch a lot of TV, but I still try to not waste too much time. And it was a good lesson to learn from Tibor because he died 15 years ago, so he's not around anymore, but I still keep that thought. And then after that, I started my own practice with my friend and partner, Bonnie Siegler. This was always the official photograph of number 17, the official portrait of us. It is really me, it is not really Bonnie. We didn't know each other then, but we met right after college, and we started a design studio that was very much in the model of, I would say, Emin Company, and we worked together really well, and it was always about finding the bigger idea, and also having fun. We toyed with titling, if we ever did a book about number 17, it was going to be called Because We Thought It Would Be Fun, which was sort of the reason that we did everything. Sometimes it was, and sometimes it wasn't, but that was usually the thought we had going in. And we ended up doing a lot of different kinds of work. We like to do as many different types of work as possible, but here's things that we did, like this is a logo for Orbitz. We also helped invent and design Lucky Magazine. We spent a year working on what it would be in terms of the content and not just the look. And we did the identity for 30 Rock, the TV show, and the funny thing about this is it's completely based on the logo that we did for Saturday Night Live, which you'll see coming up in a little bit. And when we were working on Saturday Night Live, 30 Rock came up just at about the time that Lorne Michaels wanted to change the logo, so we used the design for our old logo for 30 Rock, so we got to just swap it out. And then also things like working on the logo for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, which was a really fun project and actually was, the viewing audience chose the logo. We presented a bunch of logos, they put all 3 up on the web, and the audience sort of chose the logo, and they actually chose the one that we liked best. And then the other partnership of my life is my husband, Paul Sayer, who is also a graphic designer. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work, but it's really, really, really good. And the best thing that I ever contributed to his office is that I noticed that the office of Paul Sayer shortens down to OOPS, which, if you knew him, you would know that's so appropriate. Anyway, he's incredibly talented and really driven and very serious, and it's really nice to have someone sort of in your life who at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're panicking about whether the paper that you chose to print the book on is the right paper, you can turn to them and they're perfectly happy to talk about that. And he does a lot of different kinds of work. Right now he's very embedded in this relationship with They Might Be Giants, the band. He does everything for them now, including music videos and all their album covers and weird coins and decks of cards and stuff, so they keep him pretty busy. He does a lot of other things too, book covers. That was the end. So here's the next one.